Ladies and gentlemen, I have wanted to do this episode ever since we started the Tackle Talk podcast, and it's finally here. On this week's episode, we have the one and only Mr. Bill Dance. We had Bill on for a full hour to talk fishing, life, history, and more on this very, very special episode of Tackle Talk.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bill Dance, and you're listening to Tackle Talk.
All right, boys and girls, this is not a drill. On today's episode, as you heard, we have Bill Dance on for a full hour-long conversation. And I guess I want to start out by saying that I've probably never been so nervous to talk to somebody in my entire life. I do sales, right? I talk for a living, and I was very, very nervous going into this interview. And if you can see me during this interview, like if we had a camera on me and you could see the whole thing, I have I'm sure a smile just permanently glued to my face. I mean, the stories that he tells, the history, the knowledge, it's all pretty incredible, and it's, again, something that I've just wanted to do for so long, and I'm so glad that it finally happened. And this conversation itself just kind of shows you the kind of guy that Bill is. Bill is obviously light years above this show will ever be, times like a million. He did not have to take the time out of his day to talk to us, to some random guy sitting in, his spare bedroom with a microphone. He has no obligation, but he did it anyway, because that's just the kind of guy that Bill is. So first and foremost, my sincerest thank you goes to Bill for hopping on to chat with me today. Like I said, dream come true. Bill Dance is fishing. There's no other way around it. And I can pretty confidently say that if it wasn't for Bill, I would not be doing this show and doing what I'm doing now. He paved the way for fishing media, and he taught millions of people how to fish through his TV shows over the years. And I think here at Tackle Talk, we're kind of trying to do that same thing, albeit at like a microscopic fraction of the reach that Bill has. But I don't really know what else to say. I just hope that you guys get half as much joy out of this episode as I had making it. So without further ado, let's get to our conversation with Bill Dance. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are joined today by a gentleman that needs no introduction, the legend himself, Mr. Bill Dance. Bill, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's good to be with you again, Andrew.
Awesome. So we're going to start this conversation at the beginning. I'm really curious. I've read some things different places, but I'd love to hear from you. Where did your love of fishing begin? Who lit that spark in you from the beginning?
Well, I've said this lots of times, and it's true. I was fortunate as a youngster growing up that I had a daddy and a granddaddy that gave me the greatest gift of all, and that was introducing me to the sport of fishing. My granddaddy was more of a fisherman. My daddy was more of a hunter, but he joined in. He fished some too, but he was more of a hunter than a fisherman. He loved to shoot trap and skeet, and loved to hunt, but he didn't fish near as much as my granddaddy. My granddaddy he fished that's all he did. And so I love to spend most of my time, every available minute that I had, over in Moore County in Lynchburg, Tennessee. Now, Moore County is located about 85 miles south of Nashville. It's a dry county, but it's where Jack Daniel's distillery is. And so Mulberry Creek runs right by the distillery and meanders its way. And I'd say a good center fielder with a good arm could stand on my grandmother's front porch and throw a baseball in Mulberry Creek. So I was a skip, jump, and a hop to the creek. And that's where I spent most of my time. It's running water. And even today, it's still my favorite form of fishing is moving water. So I learned so much about fish behavior in moving water, how fish relate to certain types of current areas, midstream obstruction, where current breaks were, transitional breaks were, what current does to fish. It changes what current does when it hits an object, changes speed and it changes directions, and how fish relate to that and how bait fish relate to that. And I had a place over on the Tennessee River near Pickwick Lake, one of my favorite lakes. And I spent a lot of time fishing Pickwick and the Tennessee River. And the tributaries that feed into the Tennessee River and to Pickwick Lake, all those creeks, they're clear creeks, they're running water, they're gravel bottoms, limestone. And they take me back to about 2 hours west of where I grew up. So the creeks look the same. And I spend many times just going back there and parking my truck and just jumping in the creek with a spinning rod and a jig and wading back up those creeks and catching, creek fish, smallmouth, and what we call, it's a rock bass. We called them black perch back then. And then I live within 20 minutes of the Mississippi River, where I spend a lot of time in the summer months fishing catfish. So I still go back to moving water whenever I get the opportunity.
That's kind of funny, too, because that's how I grew up, too. We live in farm country, basically. So the best fishing is in these kind of farm creeks that a lot of people just drive right over and they wouldn't even think about it. It's like, oh, it's ankle deep. I'm not going to go fish that. You get in, you put on an old pair of shorts and walk, and you find little smallmouth that have never seen a lure before.
Oh, I've done it a jillion times. I love it. I really do love that kind of fishing.
So I read a while ago that you originally wanted to be a doctor back in the day, that was like the career path you were going to go down. And then I think you kind of switched. I know I read the story about the motorcycle accident and that you were, you switched over to angling. What kind of doctor did you want to be back in the day before you switched over to want to be an angler?
Well, I gave a lot of thought to being a vet. And I kind of wish in some ways that I'd followed that route, because my wife has pets, and every time you pull up in front of a vet's office, that's $100. And every time they look at the pet, that's another $100. And if they touch the pet, that's another $100. The vets have got it made. They're a millionaire just instantly, and then a multimillionaire the first year they go in business. I don't know. I hadn't gotten really that far with it. General practitioner. They gave a thought to that. Just seeing a lot of different people and meeting a lot of different people. But I get to do that today, doing what I do.
Yeah. And I can attest to the vet thing too. I used to work at a vet's office in high school a little bit, so I can attest to that. You get that bill, that shock value comes out when you see it, and then, that dog was in there for 3 minutes and $400 later for a couple of pills.
What is that? How much? You just looked at his ear.
So then at some point you decided that, okay, I'm going to go down this fishing route. I think there's an actual future here. At what point did you start to take that seriously and say, hey, maybe this hobby that I have on the side, I grew up fishing, maybe I can make a career out of that?
Well, when the first tournament came along in around 1967, I was working for a company that sold sporting goods, but it sold a lot of other things. Was a jobber salesman. Now, a jobber salesman called on hardware stores, and it was kind of like a distributor. I don't think you have distributors these days, but they were kind of a middleman that brought in merchandise from the manufacturer and then held it and then sold it to the retailer. But you don't have those today like you did back then. But anyway, I worked for one, and they had sporting goods. And back at that time, my boss, my sales were up, fortunately. And there was a big bass tournament going to take place on Beaver Lake in northwest Arkansas on a big Highland reservoir. And I'd gotten an invitation to participate in that particular event. And I asked my boss, could I go to it? And he said, well, yeah. Your sales are up. And so I went to that particular tournament, and there was 125 contestants from all over the country invited to participate in that tournament. And as luck would have it, first day I was in first place, and I held first place the second day. And a good buddy of mine, Stan Sloan out of Nashville, he was a policeman over in Nashville, a motorcycle patrolman. Stan, good fisherman on Kentucky Lake, he won the tournament, and he was first, and I was second, and I think I missed first place by about a pound and a couple of ounces. And so, I don't know, about a month later, this was in June of '67. Several months later, there was another big tournament. Can't remember. It wasn't a BASS, a Bass Angler Sporting Society tournament. It was another big event, and it was held on Kentucky Lake. Well, I went to that particular event and participated in it, and it had like 150 contestants in it. And as luck would have it, I finished second in that event. Well, it wasn't, but about a month later, several months later, I believe it was in the fall of October of '67, Ray Scott, BASS, had another tournament on Smith Lake in Alabama. And it was a deep howling impoundment. It had a lot of Kentucky bass in it and some largemouth. Is predominantly Kentucky's now. But I fished that event, and would you know, I finished second in it. Well, I thought, well, I don't know what first place feels like. But I was doing fair. And the following year, we had a tournament. Our very first tournament was in Sam Rayburn Reservoir in Texas, Jasper, Texas. I went to that event, and I won that event. I won it. And that was the BASS tournament. Came back home. And the very next tournament was at Ross Barnett at Jackson, Mississippi. And Ray had a big field of contestants, and I won it. And so I was riding pretty good. I had 3 seconds and 2 firsts. And then here we go back to Smith Lake in Alabama. And as luck would have that, I won it. So here I had 3 seconds and 3 firsts. And I came home, and the first week I got a phone call from Jim Bagley. He's a lure manufacturer in Winter Haven, Florida. He made balsa baits. And he offered me a job. And it wasn't but a few days after that, I got a call from Head and Lure Company in DeWilchick, Michigan, one of the oldest lure companies in the country that made the old Lucky 13 and a lot of the old baits, but they were making current baits too. And I was very familiar with Head because I had fished a lot of their old wooden baits. And well, I gave a lot of thought, and they invited me to come to Michigan. And I was thinking about what I needed to do. And I got a call from a company in Tyler, Texas, and it was Nick Cream. And Nick was the inventor of the plastic worm. And he go back in Google and look who invented the plastic worm. And he was from Akron, Ohio, up your way. But he had moved to Tyler. And his wife her name was Cosma. Sweetest 2 people. They were like a mother and daddy. And they asked me to come to Tyler. They'd like for me to see their facility and to go to work for them. And I thought, well, since 50% of the fish I was catching every year was on plastic worms, I said, boy, this might be good. Well, they invited Diane, my wife, and I to come to Tyler. So what we did, we got a flight out of Memphis and flew to Shreveport, and they picked us up in Shreveport, Louisiana, and we drove down to one of the guys that worked for him, Ken White, picked us up, and we drove to Tyler. And we stayed with Nick and Cosma for a couple of days. Nick toured me around the plant, showed me the different worms he made. And he said, here's a worm that I'm going to introduce. I'm going to put it in a pack. And I know you fish a rig called a slip sinker rig. And what I'd like to do, Bill, I'd like to take this rig and put 6 hooks and 4 slip sinkers. I don't know why I did that. Why did he put 6 slip sinkers? I guess it's a weight factor. And I'm going to put 6 worms in that pack, and I'm going to call it a slip sinker kit. And I want you to take a lot of our key buyers. And we didn't have Bass Pros or Cabela's or Academies and big stores like that. We just had some big discount chains and hardware stores that basically sold fishing tackle. And I want you to take some key buyers fishing on Rayburn Reservoir and Toledo Bend and some reservoirs down here and show these, and riders, and show them how to fish slip sinker rig. Well, I did that. And he said, I want to furnish you a company car and double your salary. And I thought, boy, this is a dream come true. Well, I get to fish every day. I'm working for a tackle company, something I dreamed to do and just dreamed of being able to do. And I took the job, and Bagley became a sponsor later down the road. But I worked for Nick for about 2.5 years, continued to fish in the tournaments. And one day I got the idea, long about early 70s, I thought, if I can do this for Nick, why can't I do it for Bill Dance? And I walked in Nick's office and I said, Nick, I got an idea. And he looked at me and laughed and he said, you want to do this on your own, don't you? And I said, I want to try it. And he said, you see that door right there behind you? I said, yes, sir. He said, it swings both ways. You go back and you try it. If it doesn't work out, you come back. He was that kind of fellow. And so I tried it and I rocked along with it for a little bit. And we started Strike King Lure Company, Charles Spence and I. And we rocked along with that for a period of time. And I had writers come to me and say, let's go fishing, Bill, and we'll do a story. And of course, I had to leave Charles there making baits and working at Strike King. And I got feeling pretty bad about that. And they didn't want to take Charles. And it got to be a very uncomfortable situation. So Charles and I were friends all the way up to the end, all the way till Charles passed away. And we were very good friends and closest friends. And but anyway, I went my way, and he kind of went his way, but we stayed very close, even although we weren't partners anymore. It was Strike King. And one day I picked the phone up. I called Cotton Cordell, who made the Cordell Spot and the Red Fin and all those lures. And he said, what are you doing? I said, I'm not doing anything much, but just fishing tournaments. And he said, well, I hear you and Charles started Strike King. I said, yeah, we did, but I'm not doing it. I gave Charles the business, half the business back, and we just separated ways. He said, why don't you come over and go to work for me? So I went to work for Cotton. Then Cotton and I started a TV show in Memphis. That led to Jackson, Mississippi, to Baton Rouge, to Paducah, the regional shows. I was doing 4 shows a week, 208 shows a year. Then we syndicated. Then we went national. Then we went to TNN. Then we went to Walmart. We went to Chevrolet, to Purina. We picked up national sponsors. It was just clicking. And best move we ever made. And then TNN sold out. Viacom bought them out. And then I went with Discovery, NBC Sports, Discovery Outdoor Channel, and to the Sportsman Channel. And our home run, I was running 4 networks with NBC, Discovery, Sportsman. And so anyway, we ended up keeping the shows on the Sportsman Channel and on Outdoor Channel. And those were our best, the best demographics we had. And that's where we are now with World Fishing Network, the Outdoor Channel, and the Sportsman Channel. And that's where we are. So it's been a real good ride. I seem like I've been on every block of it, from a distributor salesman to been writing for newspapers. I wrote for magazines. I've been in lure design, been in ad layouts. I've been on all 4 corners of this business. So I've really accomplished what I really wanted to accomplish, from radio to newspaper to TV to where we are today. So we've been doing outdoor television now for 56 years. And so it's a fun ride. And now our social media, we've got somewhere between 1.4 and 1.5 million followers. So we're rocking along with that pretty good. And then our YouTube channel is clicking. So along with Twitter and Facebook and everything's going real well.
One thing I was going to ask you is, you've seemingly done it all at this point on all corners of the industry. You've checked off all these boxes. Is there anything still left on that bucket list that you're like, I just haven't got to do this yet, that would still be fun?
Well, I don't know. Never done a movie, but I don't think I could do that. I'm not that good an actor. I'm gonna get to do a music video in a couple of weeks with Luke Bryan. That's something new. I've never done a music video.
Isn't that
So
funny? 56 years in, you can still be new things and new media. That's the funny part about this is you're in the media landscape now where it
yeah,
changes day
yeah.
by day.
So that's the only. Trying to think of other things we've done. Been on some nighttime talk shows. Have done that. We've done our blooper stuff. We've done done some crazy stuff. I've been fortunate to be able to do stuff I'd never been able to do. I've been a grand marshal in NASCAR races. I've started races. I've met some of the most wonderful people in the world, fishermen and other people that don't know how to fish. I've had dinner with presidents. I've been fortunate to do that. I've met presidents. I've met great people in the athletic world of sport figures, football players, baseball players, just that I'd never been able to do had I not been in this business. And it's just not me. If you'd have been doing what I have done, you could have done this. You'd done the same thing. So it's just I've just met a lot of great people doing what I do.
So I think a lot of people like my age and my generation, obviously we know you from TV. That's where, we saw you growing up. It was early Saturday mornings, Bill Dance Outdoors was on. But the cool part is you have one of the most crazy tournament backgrounds ever. That ride you were on from like late 60s, early 70s was a force to be reckoned with. I mean,
oh yeah,
it was like 23 Bass titles, 8 classic appearances. You had a second in the classic in 73, I think. 3 AOYs, like all of that. What's your favorite accomplishment or memory, or is there something that means the most to you looking back at just purely your tournament record?
Well, being able to do it and to continue to do it for almost 14 years, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today had it not been for those tournaments. They were a stepping stone. And I remember Ray told me one time, Ray Scott, who started BASS, was the founder of Bass. He said, one of these days, as much as you love this, and much as you love this competition, as much as you love fishing these tournaments, one day this will become number 2, number 3, number 4. It'll fade away. And I said, you're crazy. You're crazy. I said, there's nothing more important to me than these tournaments. And I was meeting people. I was meeting sponsors. I was winning. I was doing well in the tournaments. And I was very lucky and very, very fortunate because I was doing what I knew how to do and knew what I enjoyed doing. And I was so motivated. And it was my thing. And one day, I'll never forget it. It was on Lake Toho. It was one night. It was pouring down raining. And I was working on my boat in a boat slip there at the Big Toho Marina. And I'd finished doing some wiring on my trolling motor. And I checking my batteries to make sure everything was charging up. And I walked back up. And just a cloud burst popped up. Do you know how rains are in Central Florida? It can just pour down for 2 minutes. You got 2 inches of rain just in a matter of minutes. And as I ran and jumped in the truck, Roland Martin was running across the parking lot, and I opened the door and he said, "Whoa!" He jumped in the truck with me, and he said, "Well, I'd have drowned if I'd tried to get back over to the marina." And we sat in the truck and we just started talking and reminiscing about how we felt about tournaments. And he asked me, he said, "Oh, you gonna do this?" And I said, "I'm starting to lose that motivation." And he said, "I can't believe you're saying that." And I said, "I can't believe I'm saying it either. I don't have the desire as I once had. There's something gone. The motivation. I don't feel it in this tournament." And he said, "I said, do you ever get that feeling?" He said, "No." He said, "No, Bill, I can't believe you're talking that way." And I said, "And I know when you get to that feeling, you don't have the desire, you don't have the motivation. Something you're not going to perform. You're not going to give it your best." And he said, "Wait a minute." He said, "I remember there was a time several years ago when I did feel that way. Uh, and it affected me in several tournaments, but then I got out of it and I did well in one tournament when I felt that way. And then it just changed my motivation and I started going in a different direction. Well, I never got it. I never got it back. And so I went to one of my biggest sponsors. I went to Mercury and I said, look, I'm thinking about getting out of this. And he looked at me and he said, if you're going to do it while you're on top. He said, it's not going to hurt. It's not going to hurt your relation with Mercury. You got your show. And if you're going to do it, now's the time. And then I went to another sponsor at Lawrence. I had Lawrence at that time. I still got Mercury. And I told them, and he said basically the same thing. And Ron said the same thing. And I went to each one of my sponsors and I told them that I just basically lost my desire and my motivation. And I said, I got one more tournament. And I think that was at Gunnersville in Alabama. And that was in the late 80s, as best I recall. And I tell you how bad it was. The morning of the tournament, the first morning, I overslept. And the boat, it was a tournament. It was a classic. It was a classic at Gunnersville.
You overslept for the classic.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it was a classic. Honest to the Lord, it was. And the boats, you were designed to fish in certain boats. And the boat picked me up at my room and they were beating on the door. And I said, yeah. And Diane says, you overslept. I don't know why we overslept. And I jumped up and I was running to the boat and a tackle was in the boat. I remember that. And I had my shirt in my hand and my jacket. And I did have my shoes on and my pants on. And I ran, jumped in the boat and put my shirt on as the boat was going to the lake. And that's how much motivation I had. And I said, this is it. I'm just, in any other tournament, I wouldn't have slept that night. And that was my last tournament, the last one I ever competed in. And I think I finished 7th in that one. I believe I did. I can't remember. But
with oversleeping.
And oversleeping. But that's when I gave it up. But it was, as far as memories, they all had a certain memory. And but I guess just I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today had it not been to compete in those tournaments. They just seemed like in my career, when one door closed, another one opened, and another one closed, another one opened. And we've been fortunate that we've maintained our sponsorship, our sponsors. We've had leaders in the industry that have been with us for a long, long time. And they keep coming back and they've been with us for a long time. So I've been doing this so long. There were people that I've got a lot of buddies that were around when I was around that are successful doctors. Others are lawyers. Others are plumbers, or others are in professional fields. But the only life I know is what I do. And someone said, how long you hope to do it? I said, well, I hope to do it forever and then maybe a little bit more, because it's just something I've always done. And it's something I really enjoy doing, is being able to take what I know and pass it on to someone else. We don't try to impress anybody how many fish we can catch in 30 minutes of television, but more so in how we caught those fish. So you really only see a small percentage of fish actually caught. Now, sometimes you see every one of them, but sometimes it's tough to get a show. But sometimes we only get 6 bites or 8 bites and catch only 7 fish, and you see all 7 of them. But most times you only see a small percentage of the actual fish caught.
So on your show, obviously we see what you're throwing, and you're very good about educating people and showing people. And basically, if you're watching this, right, even if you're a novice, you're going to learn stuff and you're going to become a better angler when you're watching Bill Dance outdoors. Back in the early days, back in these like early tournaments in the 60s and 70s, what were techniques like back then? What were a lot of the boats throwing? Because I know you were credited with, obviously, like, I think one of the first guys out there throwing a Carolina rig, and you talked about your slip sinker rig there. What were some of those other techniques that guys were throwing back in those early, like, 60s and 70s bass days?
Well, they were throwing, especially I recall, spinner baits were a big, big bait back then. Topwater was a big bait back then, especially when the water temperature was over, say, 65 degrees. Spinner baits were used a lot. Plastics were fished back then a lot. Lizards, plastic worms, bomber crankbaits, the old original bomber. Many of those old baits, trying to think, plastics were fished back then a lot. Trying to think, Tom was alive back then. Tom fished the old jelly worms and the little Georges, and he caught worlds of fish on those baits. And Stan had his baits, the Zorro spinner bait. If you remember those old baits, and he was a big promoter of that. Of course, Charles, we had the Strike King, and we fished the spinner bait then. And then I went to work for Cream, and I was fishing cream worms back then a lot. And it was just, it's basically some of the same stuff, but maybe it's got more flashy patterns or more look-alike patterns on it, pad printed patterns, but it's a lot of the same stuff as far as the baits go.
The other side of that is the gear, right? The gear has changed tremendously, and that's
thunder. Yeah, the rods are lighter, the rods are more sensitive. The composition of the rods, the modulus and the rods are totally different. And the rods, they're extremely light. They're extremely sensitive. It seems like now there's a rod for everything, every different bait. You see 40-11 rods in the front of a boat. Well, I use this rod for a spinner bait. I use this rod for a jerk bait. I use this rod for a crankbait. I use this rod for a spinner bait. I use this rod for a grub. I use this rod. And you start digging through all the rods. It looks like you're in a sporting goods store trying to pick out a rod. But, and then the reels, they have more bearings. You got 3 bearings, 6 bearings, 9 bearings, 10 bearings. The more bearings, the better the reel. And the lines, oh my goodness. You look at the mono, you look at the braids, you look at the fluorocarbons. The knot strengths and the lines are considerably better. Abrasion resistance is considerably better. Our lines today are just compared to 20 years ago, compared to 10 years ago. And someone said, of all the different things that have come along in our equipment, what single thing has impressed you the most? Well, it's that simple. Our electronics. Our electronics have just absolutely blown me away. And I look at LabVIEW, Panoptics. It's mind-boggling. You look at the companies like Humminbirds. You look at companies like Lowrance. You look at companies, these electronic companies. You look at companies like Garmin. In Garmin, I made a talk at Garmin's plant to all their employees one time about impressions. And I got to see, it was undercover, and I got to see the first image of LabVIEW. And I looked at the screen and I said, and I thought I was in a hospital, and they were showing a baby when I first saw this. And I thought, what is that they're showing on the screen? And it was the beginning. It was the early stages of Panoptics. And I looked at that and I said, golly, this is state of the art stuff. But it'll take me years to learn how to read that. And then before long, LabScope, and it came in. And then perspective came in, and being able to take a unit and and arch out 180 degrees off the bow, just to pan 135 degrees off the bow of your boat with a unit with a transducer mounted on your trolling motor, and see stumps, grass, logs, vegetation, fish at 135 degrees right off the bow of your boat. If you want to just lift it up and just make one alteration, one turn of the perspective mount and shoot straight down, or your live scope and see fish. It's absolutely, it's just mind boggling. And these crappie fishermen now are going and catching fish like they've never caught fish before. Bass Pro. I told a boy the other day, I said, I got a friend. Y'all are going to run a sale on some last year units. And what's the chances he's going to be out of town and he wants to get one of these items? Y'all are running them from $999. Y'all are running them on sale for $600. What's the chances of y'all selling out? He said, we've got 800 in stock. And I'll tell him, don't wait very long. So I called the other Bass Pro in town. And I said, if y'all got very many in stock, David, the guy, the manager there, he said, we've got 1,100 in stock. So between two Bass Pro stores, that was 1,900 of this one 9-inch screen Garmin unit they had in stock. Yeah. And I said, and I knew Danny would die if he couldn't get one. And he's a big crappie fisherman. I said, can you put one back in my name and I'll come get it when the sale starts? And they said, yeah, I'll put one back for you, Bill. And of course, the sale didn't start till Monday. Do you know they had almost sold completely out by Tuesday afternoon?
1,900 of them?
1,900 of them. And you know, the bulk of the sales went to crappie fishermen.
Yeah. Well, I've seen the images are crazy where they can pan on that lay down and they just see, 200 crappies swimming under there. You can watch them. It's crazy.
Oh, yeah. And then all you do just, the other day I went with Danny. Danny said, I want to show you, I've got my boat rigged up. I said, okay. And I got mixed emotions about that. But anyway, he pulled out. He says, see that? And I said, yeah. He said, you know what that is? And I said, yeah, it's crappie. He said, you know what this is? And he pulled his line up and down. I said, yeah, that's your bait. And he said, what's this? And he turned and he said, see my bait? I said, yeah, I see it. He had 2 minnows on a line. And he said, you ever use minnows? I said, no, I ain't got a minnow sponsor. I don't have a live bait sponsor. Well, actually, I do. I've got a live worm sponsor, but they sell worms over at Walmart. But anyway, I said, turn it. And I said, yeah, I see him. He said, now watch this. I'm going to move toward these crappie. You see the crappie? I said, no. Cut your depth finder back to the left a little. He said, yeah. And I said, I see him now. He said, watch this. And he said, watch that crappie, watch it. And he went, boom, and hit. I could see the crappie actually come and boom, hit that top minnow. And he just pulled the crappie straight up. It wasn't a big crappie, but it was a crappie. It was a keeper. And he said, is that not the neatest thing you've ever seen? And I said, yeah. I said, yeah, it's pretty neat. And of course, I'd been doing it with seeing fish under the boat, jigging fish straight up and down for years with a regular also a transducer with Garmin's other units. But that whole electronic thing is just being able to go out in the middle of a lake, drop a waypoint on the spot, and then come right back to it 2 years later or 6 months later and just drop right in on the same spot.
So then how do you feel about because obviously the electronics have unlocked like 80% of the lake that before couldn't be fished as effectively, right? I'm sure back in the early days, it was a lot of guys beating the bank and you were shallow, and now they can go out and you can find that stump that nobody's known about for 50 years. Would that have changed where boats would have been back early on?
Well, it's showing fishermen that you can fish other things in the lake. You can find the contour lines. You can find other fishable features in the lake. You can find high spots. You can find road beds. You can find humps. You can find anything out in the lake as a result of with your graph. You can find channel points. You can find it's amazing what you can find. You can find anything. it's out there.
There's no secrets anymore.
No.
Well, cool. My last couple questions for you are on your TV show. So obviously you've had over 50 years in this point on Bill Dance Outdoors and doing the TV thing. What's the most challenging part of maintaining a TV show for that long? What's been your biggest, I guess, challenge with that and keeping it going for 50 years?
Creating a value, creating a better value than you've offered your sponsor. And maintaining good sponsorship, but creating a better value to your sponsor than you originally told that sponsor, and giving them. If you promised them $1 worth, give them $10 worth, and that's what we've tried to do, and we've been able to. In fact, I was on the phone for 2 hours today with a potential new sponsor, and I told you some things. I'm fixing to do when I leave East Tennessee on the 15th to go back south to do some stuff in Florida. I told him of a product he had. I said, "Has Bass Pro got that product?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." He said, "Why?" I said, "I'm gonna try it." He said, "No, you're not. I'll send you a couple of them." And I said, "Well, I'm not asking you that." He said, "I know you're not. I want you to try it. I'm gonna send you two of them. One, it does this, and one, they're identical, but they're not identical." But he said, "One will do this, and one will do that. I want you to try both of them and see what you think." And I said, "I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll expose that in 5 shows. I'm going to be doing a permit show. I'm going to be doing a snook show. I'll probably do a gator trout show. I'll be doing whatever." I had 5 shows to shoot. And I said, "I will expose that product in 5 shows." And I'm not just saying this to sign you up, but if you were a sponsor, you'd not only get a commercial in the show, but you would get this as added value. That's where I'm showing added value. And he said, "No, I understand what you're saying. I totally understand what you're saying." And he said, "Bill, I hope we can work something out. Send me the proposal and let me look at it. I'm really, really interested." He said, and so it's creating a value over and above what they're paying for.
Yeah, it sounds like under promise, over deliver.
That's it. And that's what we've always tried to do. We tried to give them more than what they bought. And creating a long marriage. I've always tried to say, when I signed a sponsor up, saying, "Tell you what, when we start, let's start crawling. And then when we get to where we think we can crawl, let's start walking. And when we get past the walking stage, then we can start running." And that's the way we've worked with our sponsors over the years. And that's the way we developed a good relationship with our sponsors. And without sponsors, you don't have anything. And sponsors are really, really hard to come by. They really are. Because everybody just thinks if they've got a camera and they've got a lake and a rod and reel, they can go out and do a fishing show. Well, they can. There's a lot of people that are very talented that can do fishing shows. There's a lot of people that can do a fishing show, and they can do a show a whole lot better than I can. But the whole thing is, you can't go anywhere without a sponsor. You got to buy that airtime, and that airtime isn't cheap. It's not. And the expense of travel, expense of shooting that show, expense of paying a cameraman, the expense of insurance for your employees, the expense of, you got a 401k, expensive. It's expensive, travel expense. And so it's not cheap. So we've been fortunate over the years that we've been able to keep 10 people working as long as we have. And I hope we can continue to do it. But even through all this COVID mess, we've been able to keep our sponsors happy and keep on trucking. And I hope it continues. I think it will.
Yep. And I got to ask you, because obviously as an angler too, one of the things that brings me the most joy are Bill Dance outdoors bloopers.
Oh
They
yeah, they're
are, oh
crazy.
my goodness. And it's one of those things where I guess if you have a camera on you for 50 years, there's bound to be some funny stuff happen, right? So the camera keeps rolling and it's going to get them. What's your favorite blooper that you remember, I guess, over your 50 years?
Oh shoot, there's a lot of them. Those bloopers, I'll tell you right quick, if you got a minute. Those bloopers started as an accident. Uh, they, I'll tell you a funny story. We designed a bait for Strike King, and we made it in I wanted a 7 inch, and it turned out to be 7.5 inches, and it was a porco. I don't know if you remember. It was a worm made out of pork, but it was 7 inches, 7.5, and Craig made it 7.5 inches long. But anyway, we introduced that, and we sold the living fire out of that bait. And Walmart bought them like crazy. Walmart bought the living fire out of them, and I was sponsored at that time by Walmart before I went with Johnny, before I went with Bass Pro, and then I said, wonder if a 5 inch would sell. And Charles said, well, I don't know. Why don't we try it? And so I tried it on spinning, and it worked. It worked well. So we marketed it in a 5 inch model, and so Walmart, they loaded up on it and they sold it, and they sold a lot of them, and they reordered, and they doubled up on their reorder. Well, what happened is, as wild as it goes, one of their salesmen came over to the office one day, and he said, Bill, I know you don't like reruns, but I'm going to ask you a favor. Walmart's got a big supply of those 5 inch porcos. Is there any way you can rerun a show on that 5 inch? And I said, Tommy, I hate to run a rerun. He says, Bill, we've got to do something about that 5 inch show. You got to do a show. They've got a ton of those baits, and everybody doesn't see your show, and they don't. Everybody doesn't see that show that runs.
Yeah.
And he says, is there any way possible you can run? And I said, Tommy, let me see. Well, the editor had done something, and he misplaced. He needs to edit from the master because it's broadcast quality tape. And he couldn't find part of the tape. And he had part of it. And I said, Tommy, I've got enough to make a half show. And he said, a half show? And I said, that's all I got. And he said, you're just telling me that. I said, I'm telling you the truth. I don't have enough to make a half show, but I don't know where he put the rest of the masters. And so we got to scrambling, and the show date, we had to get this stuff into NBC or where we were airing at that time, and to the networks. And Tony, our producer, he had been saving outtakes and just putting them back in the archives. So he pulls about 10 blooper tapes and butts that up to that 5 inch porco show and made a full show out of 2 halves. And we aired it. And believe it or not, from that half show, they sold twice as many porcos the second time around as they did the first time with a full show. Well, that blooper show aired in the second half, and about 2 weeks later, we get a phone call from Dick Clark Productions in New York, and they were doing Ed McMahon, who was on the Johnny Carson show, and Dick Clark were doing a blooper show called Super Bloopers and Practical Jokes every Saturday night, I think, or on NBC. Dick Clark Productions says, we saw on Bill Dance Outdoors recently some bloopers. We'd like to purchase 3 of those bloopers from you And Tony says, well, let me clear this with Bill. I'm sure it'd be fine. And I said, yeah, that'd be great exposure. Let them have them. And they named the 3 they wanted. And he said, Bill said, let you have. He said, no. We need to pay you for them. And they paid us about $1,000 a tape, an air, for each one of them. And I said, they don't have to do that. They insisted they paid about $1,000 a piece for them. And so we let them have them, and they mixed them in with their blooper series a few weeks later. Well, a few days passed, and Shane, our editor, says, I found the rest of that those tapes on that Porco. And I said, well, it's too late now. So anyway, that's how the blooper first started. Well, Walmart orders a pile of 5-inch baits again. They sold out and reorders. They reordered a ton of these 5-inch baits again. And so it wasn't long. Here comes Tommy again. He says, they overordered again. They're either going to have to take these baits back or we got to rerun. I said, Tommy. He said, Bill, with a half show, they doubled the order. They sold twice as much the second run with a half show as they did the first time. He says, it's amazing. He said, please let them rerun that show. I said, that's 3 times. He said, this fall, let us rerun it. He said, this is a big account for us as Walmart. I said, well, he talked me into it. And well, Shane edited the whole show together. And believe it or not, when he ran it, they sold twice as much again as they did. And it just goes to show how many people watch the show, They missed it the first time. They missed it the second time. They catch it the third time. So anyway, we get a call from NBC. They bought like 15 blooper tapes from us, 15 outtakes from us. Then we get a call from Hogan's Heroes in California. They were doing a blooper show. CBS started a blooper show. They were buying tapes from us. The BBC in London contacted us. They bought tapes from us. And then Crook and Chase at TNN bought some tapes from us. Well, we were making a fortune off selling tapes. And anyway, the blooper tape was and we ended up producing 4 of them. Bass Pro put them in, Walmart put them in, Academy put them in. We were selling tapes like crazy, and so it was highly successful. The blooper tape. So it all came about by just kind of by accident, but in one way. So they were very, very successful.
I'd say they worked out. Yeah, there's many classics. There's this snake falling in the boat, the bank giving out from under your tree falling over. Like, I don't know. There's so many good ones.
The one I like a lot is it hurt, but is when the jib. You know what a jib is?
On the camera, the
jib,
camera jib.
They put a camera on a big long, and they swing this jib out. Well, we were doing a commercial for a tackle box sponsor, and I had everything set up and I was rehearsing it. And the cameraman just swings the jib, and I had leaned down, and as I stand up, he's swinging the jib, and the whole camera hits me right in the side of the face. It hit me. I tell you what, it hit me so hard, it looked like a bolt of lightning hit me, and it knocked me for a flip, and I hit the ground. That one was a good one. And then we got a lot of mileage out of that snake falling in the boat. It was a chicken snake's what it was. It was up looking for eggs, bird eggs.
The trolling motors come off get me too. The trolling motors coming off the mount on the front and then trying to wrangle them in by the cord.
Yeah, that was a wild one. and then flying off the 4-wheeler was a bad one. And then knocking when the dirt went out from under the cameraman on that bluff.
He fell right in.
Yeah, he fell into about 9 feet of water with the camera. And then I knocked the cameraman out of the boat when I backed into him. All of those Horrible, horrible.
Well, like I said,
Well,
though, if you're going to have a camera on you for 50 years, there's going to be some stuff happen that is just going to be like at the time it may not have been funny, right? You have a $5,000 camera go in the water, you're like, oh, this isn't great, but then someday you get to look back and laugh at it at least.
oh yeah, yeah. Those cameras expensive, and
Oh yeah,
with all the sound equipment and everything, it was. I told Timmy, you could see when he stepped. I don't know why he had plenty of room. He just stands still, but he felt like the grass is greener on the other side, so he had to step a little bit further, and that dirt just gave out from under him, and you could see it just breaking loose. And here he comes,
Yeah.
Boom, right,
cool.
fell off the bluff right into the right into the water.
Poor
riding
guy.
the camera with him. But we had it. You look back on those things now, and they're funny,
Yeah.
But
Well, my last question here is
Sure.
is a little bit of a deeper one, and you've had so much effect on the fishing industry and everything, and I think we can all thank you for everything you've done over the
Thank
past 50 or 60 years. What's been the most rewarding part of it all for you?
Ooh. Well, a lot of it's been rewarding. Being able to live out a dream that's been very important. To be able to educate my children as a result of that dream, and give them not everything they wanted, but a lot of the things they wanted, to keep them close to home, which means a lot to Diane. We live in the country, and we were fortunate enough to find a pretty good sized place. Two of them live on the property. Pamela and her family live across the lake, and Patrick, our son, who does a lot of computer graphic for us and closed caption for us, and helps a lot with what we do. He lives not too far down through the woods. He's got a home. And then, of course, Billy, our oldest son, who does a lot of social media stuff for us, he's 40 minutes away. And our other son, I've got 3 boys and a girl. Pamela does secretarial work. You've been working with Pamela.
Yep.
She helps. She's a big help to me. She lives, like I said, she lives across the lake. And so Diane's got 2 of her little chicks right here. Oh, the mother hen, and one's lives in town, just on the other side of town. He's not 20 minutes away. He's got a business just north of here. So she's got all the 4 children right here. And so the grandchildren, 3 of them, one of them just, 2 of them, one of them studying to be a doctor. He just graduated from the University of Tennessee. The other one's at LSU studying to be a lawyer. We've got a granddaughter at Mississippi State, and the other granddaughter's still in high school. So they're scattered about, but they're all right here close to home. So within, half a day's drive. So we're real blessed from the standpoint. We've got a great family. Diane's done a wonderful job of raising them and directing them to live a good, righteous life. And of course, I've been gone so doggone much. She's brought them up the right way. So we've been very, very fortunate. I think the one thing I'm most proud of, or I say proud of, it means a lot to me, that someone said, a writer asked me one time, he says, tell me what particular thing in your life has really meant a lot to you. And I've been fortunate. It's just not me. I keep saying me. I hate that word me and I, but you asked me the question. There's a lot of people, had they come along, I just came along at the right time. And I was fortunate to be able to turn a profession into a hobby. And I thank the good Lord for that. So a writer said, and it wasn't in the last week or two. He said, he was in my office and he said, I saw that award this award, uh, starting a NASCAR race, that had to be the most special moment in your life. And I said, no. He said, well, what about that? And I said, no. What about this? I see your pictures and I see that award or this award or that award. And I said, well, no, I was just fortunate to receive those awards. Well, what about that particular fish, that record fish? Or what about that tournament? I said, no. And I've got a real special an award coming up May 8th. The University of Tennessee is going to honor me. They've only given out one, and it happened 125 years ago. And they're going to give me one May 8th. It's a doctorate degree at the University of Tennessee. And I'm really, that is very, very special to me. So, but even with that, what is very, very special to me is I was there when I saw each one of my 4 children catch their very first fish. And to see the excitement, I can relive that moment with each one of them. I remember what they said. I can remember them hollering and backing up on the bank in the boat, what they did, how they hollered, the excitement in their eyes. And they were hollering, help me, what I do. I can remember each one of them, that special, special moment. And I can relate it to when I caught my very first fish and how it changed my direction in life and what it did for me. And I was fortunate not only to see all 4 of them catch their first fish. I've seen Sophie, Grace Ann, I've seen 5 of my grandchildren catch their very first fish. So that is probably the most special thing that I can live with. And that if when we have Christmas dinner or when we have Thanksgiving dinner or when we're all together, one of them will bring that up. And we all start talking about that first fish. And everybody gets a big kick out of it. And one says, I'll never forget what it was like when I set the hook. And that it's that thing inside the reel went, and I said, that's the drag. You know, they were, and they just start reliving that moment. But the thing about it, like me, that first fish I caught lives within me, and it'll live within me till the day I die. And the thing with them, that same feeling will live within them till the day they die. So that to me was the most special, and is the most special. Those 8 moments are the special 8 moments in my life. So, and I think most parents and most people that heard me say that can agree. Those are very, very special times, and they are. To see your own call in that first turkey, or work that first flight of mallards, or shoot their first deer, or catch their first bass, or it's it's the stuff that we pass on. So we pass along the way. So they surely pass along their experiences to me, and it's something I'll live with the rest of my life and something I'll never forget. So you asked me what single one thing. Well, I had 8 of them, and I won't forget the awards or the special moments in life that came my way. And I'm very, very fortunate to have received awards and very fortunate to receive the various things that have been given to me. And they're very, very special. And certain fish that I caught were very special, and I won't forget those. But the ones that have a star that blink above them are those ones that surround my family. And so those are just doggone special.
That's so cool too. As a guy that, to anglers, it seems has done it all. The most important things are family memories. And I think we can all relate to that.
When the world is gone and there's nothing around, you've always got your family.
That wraps us up very nicely here. Thank you so much. Again, I think for everybody listening to this right now, I think I speak for everyone when I say we would not have the industry we have today if it were not for Bill Dance. So thank you for everything you've done. And ladies and gentlemen, that is our conversation with the one and only Mr. Bill Dance. Bill, thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrew. God bless.
All right. That was our conversation with Bill Dance. Just a a dream come true of an episode. Again, like I said, I hope you guys got half the enjoyment out of this that I did, just getting to talk to him and listen to these stories and the history behind, the Bassmaster series, behind all the lure companies, behind his media kind of empire really that he's built, and how he started out and how all those things kind of came to fruition. It's so cool to hear about, the first Bassmaster tournaments or the first TV show that he did, when we're just so used to, we take it for granted that Bill Dance is fishing and he's always been around, right? That had to start somewhere. So it's so cool to hear these stories, to hear about what guys were doing back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. And like I said, Bill was a pioneer for anything and everything fishing media. So this show, for all the YouTube people you watch, for the TV shows you watch, anything that has to do with fishing media, pretty much you have to tip your hat to Bill Dance for paving the way for that. So thank you again, Bill, for stopping by, and thank you guys for listening. So if you enjoyed this episode, head over and subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Google Podcasts. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find the Tackle Talk podcast. Go subscribe, leave us a review if you can. That helps a ton, and we will see you back here next Tuesday for another brand new episode of Tackle Talk.